having us.
Jovan. This is called a chapbook. That's the technical phrase for it. Can you explain what that is exactly?
That's correct. Yeah, so a chapbook is a small book, about 16 to 20 pages, 22 pages long, usually sold for quite cheap. It comes from the word chap is like a dealer. So they're like books like back in the day, 1600s. They'd be sold for pennies on the dollar.
How did you get involved in the project?
So I got involved through Grant Monroe, who is the head of Woodbridge Farms Press out in Kingsville, Ontario. And I was happy to work with Peter. It was great. They put us together. Peter's working with Grant, obviously, to put out this book. And it was a fun experience. It was great to work with an established poet to kind of see his process.
Yeah. What attracts you to poetry?
Oh, that's a big question. So I really like the rhythm of it. There's different approaches to poetry, but I really like to listen to the musicality of it. It's kind of like a concentration, right? It's like if you're having a novel, you're reading a novel, it's kind of like a light beer. Poetry is very much a vodka.
Oh. That might be the first time I've ever heard it described as that. Do you agree? It's like a vodka?
I don't personally like vodka, so I'm more of tequila. So poetry for me is my tequila. I'm a master's student at the University of Windsor, and my current poetry endeavor is my thesis project, which is about bringing together science and poetry visually. So I'm looking at the actual molecule of, say, serotonin, and then the poem is about serotonin, specifically related to mental health and how that just is disrupted. So I'm trying to bring it all together.
That sounds fascinating and a large task to be able to bring it all together. How far along are you in your research?
I've actually completed 60 pages of poetry, so I'm on my way there. And then there's also the critical component I haven't touched yet because that's going to take some time.
Yeah. What attracts you to poetry?
I love playing with words on a page. I want to see them dance, interact. I love playing with the negative space that's left over. I feel that every part of the page should be intentionally used, whether it is blank or not. The lack of space, using up space, it's important to me.
So it's almost a visual art as much as it's a literary art for
exactly.
you. Jovan, you actually edited Peter's book. How unusual is it for a younger poet to edit an older one?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think kind of unusual, but it was an interesting experience watching the process of another poet work.
What did you learn?
Well, I kind of learned how he treats his poetry, how he goes over it. So a lot of times, the way when me and Nick Hildenbrand put out a book in 2022, we had our own process. We would go back and forth relatively quickly. Whereas with Peter, he really liked to spend time with each word, with each poem, with each page. It was very intentional for him. Not to say that we weren't intentional, but rather there was a greater weight to the page than I was used to, and it was interesting to see how that worked for him. It was really cool. It wasn't like Peter was lording over me or anything like that. It was very democratic. He was really interested in what I had to say, and I was really interested in his reasoning for a lot of these choice words and things. These are little vignettes, right? These are short poems.
They're very short. Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can open one. A horrible cocktail, a misery and mayhem, shaken and stirred. It's called Ice Storm.
Yeah.
They're very short.
Yeah, there are some that are a little longer. My favorite is Tradition and Limbo Moon kind of towards the end. And they're meant to be these little pictures of day-to-day life for Peter. And he tries to give them a spotlight, give them more attention, and slow things down almost, and show the world daily.
Yeah. You are both published poets yourselves. You put out a book, Where the Map Begins, which came out in April of this year. I want to hear your poems. Who would like to start?
Kalie,
I can take a start here. So you're not going to get the full experience because I play with the page, surprise. But this poem, basically this collection actually put out by Marty Gervais of Black Moss Press. It's a collection of Windsor through poetry. How are we seeing Windsor, the history of it, the feeling of it? It explores all of Windsor. And so I was in charge of Ward 9, and this is Border Cities Aero Club. Sunday morning at the lounge, the coffee we sip drips warmly into the oak tabletops that line the dull walls inside the Border Cities Aero Club. Back when the Walker brothers owned this land, it was just a farm. At night, human smugglers brought hidden flights using a dirt runway. Hearty chuckles bind our toothy smiles between ears as eager as the drifting snowflakes that plead to enter the windows of the Border Cities Aero Club. Gramps trained here when the terminal was a military barracks. The feds tried to install a third runway. I will never tire the tales of when we lived in the sky, when clouds kissed the wings of the steel beasts we conquered, of the community we created, of the legacy we protected. All it takes is a smell of AV gas, and I'm there, man. Of the hearts we brought together, I'm back at the Border Cities Aero Club. Because here at the Border Cities Aero Club, we're just people from Windsor who love to fly.
That was great.
Yeah, thanks, Kalie.
Yeah. Jovan?
Yeah, so my favorite poet is a guy named Hart Crane from the 1920s, and he wrote a really wonderful work called The Brooklyn Bridge. So my idea was to localize it for the new Gordie Howe. So that's where the premise of the poem is to Hart Crane. How many dusks differ from dawns at the curtain of waves, where hawks crest a wind? Thunderbirds tumult from anchors of river and sky, steel obelisks sealed behind slabs of cement, like abdominal sinews and wiry meat, shedding gray stones above like salt below, apparitional as that inviolate whir, buzz, or whine, the quiet hum, a hymn to panoramic slights, girding a bridge undone still open in the middle. The slant moon, the slanting towers, the sidelong aperture from the tallest trees to the smallest cable, the duress of ships bleeding against the earth like the hogs of the Detroit French, who were loosed in the swamps to trample the snakes, whose shedding skin reddened the mud of Grand Marais, the mud of Zug, industrial clot under the wet, long underside of semi-trucks, hanging over the land like a soaking neck. Under the bridge I think of Crane jumping, with white choiring wings, feeling the chasm of his lungs, his head springing from the cannon-covered bed, like the roots of marsh thicket.
That was great.
Woo.
Thank you.
I love these. I wish we could spend more time on them. So what's happening tonight at Cafe Amore and Art on Ottawa Street?
So we've got Peter Rastovic book launch, basically, and then we are the special guests.
Yeah.
And we will be reading our own poetry, which might even be from what we read today, too. So you got a little sneak peek.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what I will be reading tonight.
Oh,
so.
perfect. You got to practice in.
Well, thank you so much for coming in this
Thank you
morning and
for
for sharing
having
your
me. Thank
poetry.
you.
Kalie Chapman and Jovan Stefanov are two poets involved with Limbo Moon. The boat launch is tonight at Cafe Amore and Art on Ottawa Street. The time now here on Windsor Morning is 8:21.